Mullah Nasruddin was walking down the road one day when he met a robed monk coming in the other direction. And it was the heat of the day, so they sat under a large shady tree to talk about spiritual matters. In the course of the conversation, the monk said to Mullah Nasruddin, "I am so selfless that I only think of everyone else. I never think of myself." And Mullah Nasruddin said, "Well, I am so selfless that I am everyone else, so I can only think of myself." So I wonder what will happen for us if we mix a little Zen anecdote with a Sufi allegory, knowing that it's all an alchemy in us. Once we've tripped the mind, and the mind has no longer the need to understand. There's that story about the old woman who was walking down the road when she saw a young monk sitting on the side of the road in deep meditation, but looking very emaciated, with the birds nesting in his hair and so forth. And feeling great feeling for him, she stayed with him, and she built a little hut for him, and she washed his robe for him, she cooked gruel for him. And after some long while, she wondered how he was progressing with his spiritual enlightenment. So she went into town and she secured a young lady of the night to come to the monk's hut. So the young lady of the night came to the monk's hut. She began to caress him. She sat on his knee, put her arm around his neck, and he said to her, "A bare tree sits on a cold rock in winter. Nowhere is there any warmth." So after some while, the young maiden left, and she went to report to the old woman what the monk had said. And the old woman said, "You mean to tell me that he did not ask you anything? He showed no compassion for you?" And of course the young woman responded that what he had said. So the old woman immediately went back and burned down the monk's hut and left him where he sat. And the Zen allegory is a story about a king. Well, it's not really about the king, but this king had a daughter called Kamala, and Kamala means perfection. But this king was a tyrant. He protected his daughter. He put out edicts that disallowed anyone from even to look at her or mention her name. If not, they were cruelly treated. So the populace, all the people, lived in fear. They dared not even whisper the name of the princess. But then one day, a young man whose name is Sadiq, which, for your information, means seeker, saw the princess bathing in the river and was immediately smitten by her beauty. But being smitten, there was a goodly dose of fear and curiosity mixed in there as well. So Sadiq went back to his parents and mentioned that he had fallen in love with the princess, and they were horrified. Forget about her, don't even mention her name. Look what happens to those people who dare to do so. But somehow Sadiq could not forget. So he went down to the river day after day, hoping that he would see the princess once again. He could not forget her. But then, one day, the princess also saw him, and she too fell in love with him. And she confided in an old peddler, an old crone who used to come around to the palace gates now and then. And so the princess asked the old crone to tell Sadiq of her feelings for him. And so the old crone went around to try to find this young man. And finally she came to his house. And when she met Sadiq, she said, "The princess is in love with you. Do whatever you need to do to win her hand." Now Sadiq knew of the edicts, had seen the results of the cruel treatment of those who had even mentioned the princess's name. So he was filled with fear. But still within him there was this great longing to be with her, to see her, to be close to her. So he made a resolve that he would go and declare his love. But as he was walking to the palace, there he saw a man being flayed on the side of the road. And when he inquired, it was found that this man had written a poem to the princess and was being punished. So the resolve of Sadiq abated and the fear took over. But then his resolve returned again, and he marched off in the direction of the palace, and again he came across someone who was being sent out of his shop, tossed into the street and beaten by a mob of people and the gendarmerie. And again he was told that this man was being punished for looking up, because when he looked up, there was possibly the turret where the princess was kept there. So after this, Sadiq resolved that he would only keep his head to the ground. He would not look up. He would just keep his sights down on the ground. And as he was walking, he actually bumped into the old crone once again, who said, "What are you doing?" And Sadiq said, I'm following the edicts. I still want to find the princess and be one with her, but I have to follow the rules." And the old crone scolded him roundly. How can you follow rules when the rules change by the moment? You look up and you're punished, you look down if you're punished, because it might be that you're walking in the steps of the princess. So Zadig was totally confused, absolutely addled. What was he to do? Torn as he was there any right way? Was there any way? But as he was walking down the road, kicking the stones in front of him, he came across an old sage sitting by the side of the road, seemingly in meditation. But as Zadig approached, the old sage opened his eyes, called him by name, Zadig, Zadig, come, what are you doing? And Zadig explained, although the old sage knew. And so the old sage stood up, took Zadig's hand and said, come with me. And the old sage led Zadig to the palace gates, where he stated to the guards, this young man seeks the hand of the princess in marriage. Allow us to enter. Now, no one had ever spoken to the guards in this way before. So, in an adult state, they opened up the way for the sage and Zadig to enter the palace and into the presence of the king. The old sage said, this young man, Zadig, the seeker, seeks the hand of your daughter in marriage. The king laughed. Has he not seen the punishment for those who have sought her hand before? And at this time, Zadig spoke up. He said, afterwards, Zadig the seeker and Kamala, the princess, perfection, were married. What was it that Zadig said to the king? To allow this marriage, this union to take place. How do we mix oil and mortar? How do we bring the ingredients of yeast to unite and ferment and bubble so that it can make dough? What did Zadig say to the king that allowed this union to take place?
I'm willing to face death.
Right. Right on. I'm willing to die for this. Isn't it so?
Yeah.
Oh, right of a job. Oh, Lord. Right then and there.